Well, everyone, welcome back to the Pulse stage and welcome to those of you who haven't been here for one of our talks this morning. Our next panel discussion is called The Connected Supply Chain, Opportunities from Disruption. Now, following global supply chain disruptions from Brexit to COVID and beyond, manufacturers have had to reimagine their approach to logistics and procurement. This session examines how cutting-edge technologies, including blockchain, AI-powered forecasting and real-time tracking systems are creating more resilient and efficient supply chains. We have a fantastic panel here to talk about it today, and chairing the panel for us is Samantha Jobe, UK Ambassador to Sweden. So please welcome to the stage our panel and Samantha.
Thank you very much. So my name is Samantha Jobe. I'm the UK Ambassador to Sweden. I'm here as part of the Foreign Secretary's initiative that ambassadors should be promoting as much as possible the connections between the countries we work in and all the different nations and regions of the UK. That's very easy when it comes to Sweden. We're incredibly proud of the connections between Sweden and Wales. I will be working those in if I possibly can in this conversation. But that's not really what we're here for in this session. We're going to talk about what happens in this, as an ambassador, I often get asked geopolitical questions. What's happening in the world, ambassador? And what is happening in the world is an increased sense of uncertainty and unpredictability. And as human beings, when we hear that word uncertainty or unpredictability, sometimes we close down. We go to the doctor, we say, tell me the worst, because you sort of want to know, and then I can plan for it. But actually, when we don't know, in that not knowing and that uncertainty is opportunity. That's where creativity comes in. That's where creative solutions come in. And we're going to hear about that from our excellent panel this afternoon. But you don't want to hear too much of my voice, so I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Paul.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Ambassador. Yep, Paul Brooks from the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade. We empower UK and international organisations and equip individuals and give them the expertise to trade internationally. We were formed in 1935, and we were formed at the time when protectionism was on the rise, and we're now 90 years old and protectionism is on the rise again. So we're right at the sweet spot of international trade, and supply chains are what we do. So hopefully I can share some of those insights today. Thank you.
Hi, afternoon everybody. My name's Hazel Hung. I'm Business Development Manager for CSconnected. I have a background in physics and specifically lasers and photonics, and I've got over 15 years experience working either in or with industry in the photonics sector, and then it's coming up to 4 years now that I've been working in the compound semiconductor sector at CSconnected. So CSconnected represents the compound semiconductor cluster in South Wales. Our core mission is to support the growth of the advanced and compound semiconductor sector in South Wales. For those of you who may not know, just to give a bit of context, that semiconductors are in everything around us. You know, they support the technology that drives our phones, and in our cars. And in South Wales, we have a strong history of that dating back to the 80s, from companies like IQE, Vishay, KLA, and also the Centres of Research Excellence at Swansea and Cardiff University. And then most recently, the CSA Catapult. And we've also got a strong presence of SMEs and micro companies as well. So what's special about our cluster in South Wales is that we each have a different expertise area in the supply chain. And we support over 3,000 jobs across Wales with an output of almost 500 million pounds output, of which 95% is export. So we really rely on our global partners. My specific role as in Business Development Manager is to support the supply chain, to drive the development of this supply chain ecosystem across Wales and also the rest of the UK. And then secondly is to promote the capabilities of the cluster nationally, locally, and also internationally.
Hello, my name is Rob Learney, Head of Technology for Distributed Systems at Digital Catapult. Digital Catapult is a UK government-backed research technology organisation focused on the adoption and advancement of advanced digital for the UK economy. We look specifically in a couple of tech sectors, so AI obviously on the rise at the moment, but also Internet of Things, 5G, 6G, quantum technologies, and my area, which is distributed systems approaches. So we've been doing quite a bit. One of our core missions is on revolutionizing supply chains through the use of these technologies. So I hope that we can talk in the round about where tech fits into these transformations and, leave you all feeling a bit more educated and positive about things at the end of the session. Come and sit down, make yourself comfortable. Come on.
Don't be shy.
Come on.
That's why I got this, thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Stu, and I work for a company called Renishaw, based in South Gloss, so not too far away. And we also have quite a large factory the other side of Cardiff that people may have heard of. I've been working for the company for 25 years. I'm at the dirty side of the business, so I'm in sales. But I know enough about what goes on in our purchasing department, and indeed some of the disruption that we've seen with our own supply chains through COVID and so on. So I can talk with some authority on the matter.
Brilliant. So we are going to talk for about half an hour. If at the end there should be a chance for you to ask questions of this rather brilliant panel. So have a think about what your questions around supply chains are. My opening one, we have spent a lot of time in the era of globalization developing a sort of just-in-time approach to supply chains so that everything was maximized for efficiency. Now we find that we need to balance that with resilience. COVID has taught us that. Some of the other sort of geopolitical developments are pushing us in that direction. So how are you, from your point of view, balancing that requirement between the need for resilience that everyone's talking about, but actually the efficiencies and the business side of the model as well? Who wants to kick us off with this one? I think Hazel and then Paul, maybe.
Yep.
So I'd just like to add a bit of context, if that's all right, just to explain, I guess, why we would need more resilient supply chains across the globe. So just to give an example, the semiconductor sector is really an inherently cyclical sector. It's kind of can be very volatile and can go through these boom and bust cycles that are driven by high demand or even investment patterns. I think the most recent example is during the COVID pandemic, and we can all remember those times when there was even shortage of toilet rolls, and I remember shortage of custard creams at Tesco's, but I'm not here to talk about custard creams. I'm here to talk about the semiconductors, and there was a global semiconductor shortage back in 2020 and 2021. And what happened was that there was a surge in demand of electronics, so people needed their laptops, more phones, games consoles as well, but also automotive. So if you wanted to buy a new car, you'd be waiting, I think, easily 6 months during that time. So that really kind of highlighted the fragility of the supply chain. And it also kind of added to the global tensions at the time as well. So there's currently a bit of a global race, if you like, to try and create more sovereign capability within the supply chains in Europe, in the US, and also in Asia. And I think a most recent example, so last month, there's been some tension between the Netherlands and China through a company called Nexperia. So the Dutch government took control of the Nexperia plant in the Netherlands and basically stopped any sort of wafer shipments going across to China. And then China retaliated by stopping any fabricated chips going back to the Nexperia plant in the Netherlands. So there was this tension created, and the knock-on effect of that was the fact that it affected the automotive chips. So Nexperia actually has a 40% global market share of automotive chips. So that affected Volkswagen, Nissan, Honda, Stellantis, all these automotive manufacturers. So that's a current example of the fragility of the supply chain. I think last Friday the Dutch government announced that wafers suppliers are now allowed to go freely to China, but the tensions are still ongoing. So when we talk about resilience strategies, I just want to talk on 2 points. The first one is, to look at more diversified sourcing. If you take the Nexperia example again, their customers are highly, they tend to work on a single supply, single qualified source. And I think there is good reason for that. Why, a company that's looking in, power module systems would want a single subsource is that due to the complexity of semiconductor chips are very complex. There are hundreds of process steps. So it is a complicated process. But can these companies change their culture to shift to a more, diversified sourcing? Would be my sort of first suggestion. And then the next one is collaborative ecosystems to have a more sort of connected supply. So CSconnected, we have, as I mentioned, we have different expertise across all the supply chain. We really lean into that when we're talking about collaborative R&D. It makes us more globally competitive as a sector. But what also it can do is just a recent example. A few years ago, there was a company called Rockley Photonics that overnight found themselves without a premises. They didn't have an office, they didn't have a lab, and that was due to some National Security Act and a local plant, Nexperia, that I won't go into. But the point being that the cluster all rallied together. We helped Rockley Photonics find a new office and lab space through that collaborative ecosystem, and they found themselves a home at Cardiff University in the innovation ecosystem. So those are the first 2 points I'll leave you with.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Hazel. Some good examples there. You'll have spotted from the introductions that I'm not the technology expert on this panel. I'm more of a generalist. So I just want to talk about supply chains in a more general setting and move between cost to resilience, or if indeed that is a move. I think the first thing to say is that globalization is not by any means dead. Supply chains. I'm glad you agree with that, Stewart. That's an important point to move forward on. Global supply chains exist very much, but they are very much changing, but they're not going away. If we look at it from an international trade perspective, no one country or indeed a region is self-sufficient. They need to trade. They may have particular strengths, but no one country is fully self-sufficient. So why would a business look to be involved in this international trade at these very challenging times when we have tariffs, which is the word of 2025? Well, businesses that trade internationally are generally more sustainable, they're more resilient, they're more innovative, they employ more people, and ultimately they're more profitable. So businesses do this because that is the way to become more successful. And I think the changes that we're seeing, there's no one answer for any particular business. Each business has a different set of challenges within their supply chain. You're quite right in what you said about the fact, just in time has been the mantra for many years, and then perhaps the move towards resilience. I think cost and profitability are still important, but a lot of businesses now are having to balance the two. Mm-hmm. And the COVID pandemic and the changes that we've seen since, security concerns in Europe and elsewhere, mean that there has to be a bit more of a balancing act taking place across supply chains. But cost is still very important for lots of businesses.
If we stay at that sort of bird's eye view and ask ourselves, what are supply chains ultimately? Well, they are connected. They're a distributed group of individual components that need to communicate, essentially, in order to get the job done. And you've never really got strong guarantees over visibility of your messaging, either down your chain or up your chain. So we need to start thinking about what are the interconnected data layers, or what are the interoperable data processes that need to be brought in so that you can overcome your challenges of efficiency and resilience. Efficiency essentially means that you can get this piece to market as quickly and at low cost as possible, so you've got good negotiations back down your supply chain. Resilience means that if there's a failure or a risk that appears deep in your supply chain, you have either rapid failover or early warning to build up stocks to counter it. Both of these are data-driven processes, but today those are very fragile. You might go from a telephone call to a well-known connection in your tier 1. They might know someone in tier 2. By the time you get down to your tier 3, 4, you actually have no idea who you're communicating with or who is in there. So everyone starts to think, well, actually what I need to do in order to improve my supply chain is I need to undertake a deep mapping exercise on day 1. I need to map everything in my supply chain. And some can do it. You know, Airbus can do it. They can go down to tier 12. Some others, I think you and Renishaw have adopted a vertical integration approach to say, actually, that is how we will know our supply chain. But for the vast majority of businesses out there, what we're looking at is we're in sort of a revolutionary phase here where we have all these technologies to bear around message passing, assurance, verifiability, privacy preserving technologies so that you don't have to betray sort of business critical secrets, but you can still give away things like slot fill. When can you send me an order because I have a spare slot on my on my production line without leaking to my competitors? Actually, I'm underperforming here or something. So it's a bit of a revolution that's coming in the next 5 years, I'd say, where we get to grips with what tech can offer to break down these barriers in relaying messages between members of a distributed network.
So my next question to you, and I'm going to give Stewart the chance to start this one off, is how can humans improve the agility of the supply chain, and how can advanced tech build in the resilience of the supply chain? So which parts of this are improving the human connectivity and the trust between folks, and which part of this is where there is the advanced tech opportunities that we have now that we wouldn't have had 5 or 10 years ago, and building into the future? So I'm going to start at this end of the panel this time and work our way back.
All right, okay. So I have to say, this being in sales, that people buy from people ultimately. And while technology is a very important, increasingly important part of the management of supply, those relationships, senior relationships, are often what can start things off. And it's only once you've got trust between partners that you can then start maybe laying out a roadmap. And I think that's whether you're buying capital equipment, but other stuff as well. I think where technology is going to be playing an increasing role is in the assurance of those supply chains, as just mentioned, and also transparency in terms of manufacturing of what's actually going on in your supply chain's factories. So we've developed a system which we're currently trialling at our plant in Miskin, which is getting a lot of interest by the aerospace community, where you can see what the subcontractors are manufacturing on your behalf in real time, and you can also see the changes that they are making in that process to assure the quality of those parts and where they're coming off the production line. And if you even want to take it to its furthest degree, you even only pay when those parts are qualified, good, and available to ship. So we are going to see in the next 5 years a lot more fidelity in what our suppliers are doing without needing to pick up the phone.
It's a really interesting distinction, isn't it, between, I think, trust, which is a very human factor, and verifiability, which is a very machine factor. And we've got to... Trust is critical. It's a human relationship across the supply chain. But is trust transitive? Can I transfer my trust in this organization to you so that you can now procure from them? Or do you have to requalify the organization under your own internal processes before you can have that agile switchover at times of risk with your primary delivery partner? So this is where the human factors could be made more robust, perhaps by machine verifiability that the process was carried out to spec, that the QA met spec. So that's where the data can supplement the human factors, but also the verifiability can also pierce the layer of the invisibility as you go down your multiple tiers, because you maybe have machine-to-machine, you're in a highly regulated space like aerospace, they want to know everything at every tier, that's fine. For less highly regulated manufacturing sectors, food and things like this, You get down that layer of invisibility where it all turns to fog and you don't really know who's down there. But perhaps there's machine-to-machine verifiable claims and assertions that can be propagated up. So you can now actually have that human layer of trust on top of the data that's being received, even if you don't know who it's coming from. Maybe you do know that this is a UK registered company, but you don't know the name of the company, because that would breach the intermediaries' business advantage, because you could then route directly to them and bypass them as a supplier. So people are going to keep their business secrets close to their hearts. No one is going to give away their whole supply chain, because you'll just go down to the lowest tier and procure directly. Then you cut out the middleman and they lose all their money. So we've got to figure out ways that you can maintain the current status quo of having these visibility veils and secrets, yet get additional assurance over data that is propagating upwards to you, the initial purchaser.
I think the other thing that sectors might have a concern about, though, is this sort of cyber security element of it. So you might have some level of trust to your suppliers and your supply chain, but then there may be some bad actors, if you like, that want to hack into that supply and really disrupt the supply chain. So I think as part of maybe the hesitancy of some manufacturers to sort of uptake this technology is trying to understand exactly what it can do for them as a company, what benefits can it bring in terms of better efficiency, but then also what are the risks, and having then the skill set to understand or to bring in the expertise to help them understand how to implement these more efficient supply chain systems.
Paul?
I guess just to wrap that up, to my mind, technology and AI has a huge part to play in this going forward, but it starts and ends with people, and people that you trust and who have the knowledge and experience to understand how you can harness the technology and the AI for your relevant business and your supply chain. So I think you can't underestimate the importance of getting the right sort of people, training them well, exposing them to the technology that's out there, but then backing them and making sure they make the right sort of choices for your business.
So lots of nodding to that one. I want to pick up this question of cybersecurity, because the more technology we bake into our systems, allegedly, the more risk we're baking in that there are ways that bad actors can mess with our supply chains one way or the other. How is that challenge and maybe even the opportunities for cybersecurity businesses in this part of Wales, how is that manifesting? And are we doing enough? Is it fast enough? Or are you, as a group of leaders, feeling quite confident about all of that? Hazel, I'm going to come to you first.
So I'm not an expert on the technology, but I have heard that there are ways to enable the supply chain to be more secure using blockchain technology. In order to, for example, on the logistics side, to be able to at least track to securely track your supply chain from that side. So I think from the semiconductor sector, there is some hesitancy in the sector. I think globally, the mega corporations have got more resource and to be able to invest in that and to look at how they can, secure their systems. But I don't know if any other ones.
Stewart, how is it in your business?
Challenge. We're under attack daily, as most businesses are. We've had suppliers who've been the victim of attacks and not realised it. We constantly educate and inform our employees of where our weak points are. And also from a business point of view, I think there are gaps in legislation. So the EU have passed cybersecurity laws, which means you've got to issue patches for software very quickly and updates, but most of this legislation is written around the consumer electronics industry, and you're focusing on individual pieces of kit rather than looking at the operational security of your whole organisation. And they're two quite different things, and I think that from a legislative point of view, we've got the wrong focus, if I'm honest.
Controversial. Let's have a bit of a debate.
Yeah, well, I have to back you up on that. I think there are gaps. There are some gaps. One of the principles in distributed systems is don't trust, verify. So in other words, you're adopting a zero trust architecture in everything that you build. No single message entering your system is immediately trusted. It must be verifiable at all points. And one of the critical things that we're lacking in our future or even current digital business infrastructure is verifiable digital identities for businesses. Companies House, the canonical statutory register of organizations, gives you an 8-digit code. It's pretty useless. It's not a useful digital identity in your communications. It contains no cryptographic signing material. It contains nothing by which you can verify that I am the one issuing the purchase order. I am the one issuing the invoice. This really is an email from me and my company and my domain. So I think that we have to, or at least government's very big on digital identities for natural persons, and I have a whole soapbox about that piece. But particularly on business and supply chain operations, we need to really be looking at the latest and greatest technologies to provide verifiable digital identities for supply chains, with Companies House acting as the statutory anchor, and yet unlocking a vast potential for verifiable B2B communications and additional processes that can be unlocked through digitization.
Yeah. One of the things we pride ourselves on internationally is how far we've come as a country with things like the National Cybersecurity Centre having partnership with business sitting in the room. That's not the case everywhere yet, and it's one of the things that we try to encourage other countries to do, because every time you go to a supplier outside the UK, you're having to buy into their risk profile rather than the national one. We're talking about the digital identity. We know the EU have just brought in the digital passport concept, which will enable us to look at an item of that we want to purchase and get all of that data from what the supply chain was, is it sustainable, what was its impact, environmental impact on the way to us. So that throws up two questions for me. One is, in this world of rapidly growing technology and AI, there is a stream of thought that says that in itself is consuming a lot of the nature's resources. We're going to require a lot more power. So how are you balancing sustainability requirements with technological requirements? And if I was going to be one level more specific, what do you think of the EU digital passport? Is it a regulatory burden, or is it a great opportunity?
I'll take both of those. I like those questions. On the sustainability angle, I think that the product passport is a positive step forward. It's a standards-based approach to packaging up the data about a product being launched. And standards are really the only way to achieve mass interoperability. And one of the critical things that needs to be embedded in any future digital product passport is the true carbon accounting of what was created. So in other words, that's where your AI costs and the rest must be accounted for in the product that you're purchasing or acquiring, hopefully through something that looks like a standardized, interoperable, machine-readable, transmissible passport.
Paul?
I think it comes down to how you view it, whether it's an opportunity or a threat.
Yeah.
And most businesses that treat it as an opportunity and really embrace it, there's no doubt it will be, from a starting point, there will be a lot of effort, a lot of resources that you need to put into it, but you could potentially turn it to your advantage in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And those businesses that are really serious about growing, becoming more sustainable, understanding their full supply chain, etc., they have to embrace it and really push forward with it. It's the way that consumers are demanding that they want more information about what they're buying, how they're buying it, what is in the background in the supply chain, and the product passport is really the only way to show that in a manageable sort of way. So my plea would be, really embrace it, see how you can make it work for your business or within your supply chain. It's not going away in some shape or form, whether it's mandated and things will evolve over the next few years, or whether it's more optional. Those that embrace it will be more competitive and probably will be the winners of the future.
Stewart, is that you?
Yeah, jury's out for me. The there's an awful lot of legislation coming down on business. I know we're going to have broad shoulders, but if there's one department in our company that's grown more than anyone else, it's compliance. There's no ignoring the fact that data centres are incredibly power hungry, and I struggle sometimes to balance the equation.
Very honest answer. Thank you very much. Hazel, do you want to chip in on this one, or?
Yeah, I think the balanced equation is quite a good way to think about it. With, on the semiconductor side, it is a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, we are developing chips that are improving the efficiency of our lives, if it's helping us have more efficient EVs or solar cells. But on the other hand, we are using critical minerals. Some of the manufacturing processes are using a lot of water, so there definitely needs to be some transparency in how the semiconductor sector works to improve on the sustainability side, to tip that balance to the right way around.
I'm not sure there will be a single unifying digital product passport. I suspect these will be sector specific, but the key thing is to drive them through standards and adoption so that anyone can then build on top of them or start to consume them and use them in the way that's necessary. So you can have a fully rich data set around the piece you're buying, the chip you're buying. What was the water consumed? Were the critical minerals derived from a remanufactured source or a primary source? All of these things, the data is available for the most part, locked away, siloed, but could be made available if there was a bit of drive and push around it, and it was made easy to do. That's the thing. It's quite hard now. No one can really go it alone in the product passport world, which is why primary legislation from Europe on batteries saying this will be the driving sector, and the French, of course, with their consumer goods recyclability. These I think are positives, but sectors have to discuss amongst themselves what theirs is going to look like and how it's going to work.
Great. I'm going to be coming to the audience shortly, so start thinking of your questions. Before we get to that, I want to ask the panel, what is the biggest obstacle that they see in unlocking the power of technology to improve both resilience and efficiency in supply chains? And I'm asking that partly to what is the one piece of advice you would want the government to be taking away, whether that's the Welsh Government or the national government? An answer from everyone to that one, and then I'm going to turn to the floor.
People?
You'd like more people?
Humans?
The biggest bucket is humans?
90% of the tech is here. 90% of the tech is here and ready. 90% of the challenge is hearts and minds. What is the right tech to use? What are the right standards to adopt? Who should build those parts of those components required for the future, and who should own them? Where should my data live from my business? Should my data live in someone else's cloud environment under their control, or is my data mine and I have full sovereignty over it? These are big, big questions.
Thank you. Stewart?
I don't know, is the honest answer. What I do think in terms of UK supply chain, if we're focusing on that though, is I think there's some big questions around sovereign capability. I think there's big questions about the role that defence has to play in UK industry, and I think there's some big questions about how we leverage more, frankly, from the MOD budget to the benefit of UK suppliers.
Very good. Hazel?
Yeah. I'm going to go with money. We need money and investment. We at CSconnected, we have strong relationships with local government, the Welsh government and UK government to help them understand our needs in the industry and what it is we need, what investment we need and where. We've currently got a program running that does support the development of the semiconductor supply chain in Wales. So we do have an investment program right now that we hope to continue, but it is looking at what you were talking about more resilient local supply chains. So the program is looking at how to identifying basically suppliers that are on our doorstep that we're not necessarily aware of, trying to increase that visibility and then provide investment opportunities then to create strong supply chain links. So
If that's your company, you can come and talk to Hazel afterwards. Paul?
I think for me, the biggest challenge is business uncertainty. Businesses want certainty. They want as level a playing field as they can have, and they've had uncertainty in spades over the last few years, not helped by our biggest international trading partners, changing the goalposts almost on a daily basis, etc. But I also think there are lots of opportunities there. If we can create optimism, if we can create a can-do attitude and entrepreneurial spirit, then I agree with Stu. The defence sector opportunity is huge, but there are lots of businesses there that have the capability to get involved, but they're not quite sure where to start, and we need to be better at signposting them into those sort of areas. Here in Wales, we've seen announced, or in the last week or so, an AI growth zone in North Wales, one in South Wales. I think we need to find out more about that, what it's going to bring for businesses in this part of the world, and there are other AI growth zones in other parts of the UK as well. So there's fantastic opportunities, but we just need to get businesses to be more bullish with support and to push on.
Yeah. I'm really struck just coming into this room how much buzz there is. This is optimism, all these conversations around the room. So let's see if we can start the conversation around the room. As you can see, there is a roving mic. Who would like to
any questions?
Make a comment, ask a question.
No silly questions.
You have a question.
No silly questions.
He's only asking me because I always ask a question if no one's asking a question.
That's great.
I'll ask a very general one. We started off talking about protectionism and tariffs. On balance, could there be an upside in terms of the environment of being more protectionist?
Well, let me put the question back to you. Why do you think there may be an upside from protectionism?
If we're moving fewer goods around the world and being more resilient and self-sufficient, potentially there could be an upside. And I'm talking as someone who worries about tariffs.
Okay. The reality is we're not moving less goods around the world. It comes back to the first point, and global supply chains. There is probably more interaction between nearer neighbours, but there is still an awful lot of interaction between China and the rest of the world. China is the world's manufacturer, makes a vast amount of everything that you can think of within this room, things we're wearing, devices, etc. The reality is that most of that can't be moved to other jurisdictions. The US has made a big play about bringing a lot of manufacturing back to the US. They haven't got the people in the US to man the factories. Technology may play a part. So I think back to your question, we're just moving pieces on the chessboard around a little bit. I think globalization, international trade, supply chains, the world is getting smaller, not bigger from that perspective. But maybe I would say that being from the Chartered Institute of Export and International Trade.
One of the things we see in international relations is, so I'm in Sweden, and they recently joined NATO, and suddenly they think, great, let's trade with our NATO partners, because there's a strategic and security and international security sort of element to that. You might be more willing to share certain of your ideas or data or trade flows with those close partners. So I do see more of that in what we're seeing, including the defence industry. Stewart, am I right?
I was at a conference the other day and I saw someone put a map of the world up, and rather than putting Europe in the middle, they put us up here in the corner, and that kind of brought home where things are going. So in the manufacturing industry, China is increasingly competitive and going after Europe. They won't be successful in the States because the Americans won't buy their stuff. And I think it's not necessarily an answer to your question, but Europe, it'll be very interesting to see how Europe responds, because I think they're going to have to go more down protectionist route because the foreign technologies are getting so good. And it's quite worrying, if I'm honest.
We have another question.
Yeah, I got a quick question. I love the idea about AI on supply chains, but I have a big question that where do you see that AI can bring value on supply chains and reduce the cost of the manufacturers or suppliers? Where do you see that?
Sure. Well, some of the areas where it's playing strongest at the moment is in import-export. Having to get all of your documentation in order to undertake an import-export trade. Essentially, there are a lot of really interesting startups and scale-ups out there who are servicing companies today, trying to streamline those very human processes to make that part of the supply chain more efficient using AI, because AI is extremely good at pattern matching. Take these documents, make them match this pattern that's required by the tax office and the rest of it. It could go further. We could have true digitization of the tax service and the rest of it. But other areas that AI could be stronger in the future, well, AI requires data. You need to feed it data. And today, supply chains there isn't much flow of data, or not as much as there should be, to have, say, full multi-party optimization, but then you start entering questions about privacy of data. Why is my data training your AI, et cetera, et cetera. So it will come. We will have to solve some legal and technological challenges around privacy, but it will hopefully unlock mass optimization and curtail the bullwhip effect, you may hope.
Mm-hmm. Hazel, do you want to add to that? No? Okay. Anyone else want to take up the AI in supply chains?
Well, I just think another practical solution is scheduling. Order confirmation, all of the stuff that you're paying people to do, that will just get eaten up.
Well, yeah, we incubated a AI startup who basically plug into a company's email system, consume all the input-output data, and they can now present people in the sales and shipping rooms with much better, more granular sort of data dashboards to know exactly where everything is in flight, which really cuts down on the manual labor that they've had to do, so they can focus on the real job that they're being recruited for. So it's certainly streamlining and helping human processes.
Actually, just one point is that any of this AI won't happen without semiconductor chips. There you go.
And it won't happen without people.
Yeah, right.
I was at a lunch earlier on today talking about how do you do the right kind of AI education with the right kind of people so that they're using it in the productive ways, not sort of just terrified of change or using it to find recipes online. How are we matching the capability with our skills and our expertise to get the best out of it? Okay, we're going to have to wrap up very shortly, so I'm going to ask each of my panel members for a 30-second, what thought do they want to leave you with? And then we will wrap up. And I'm going to come to Paul first. You can have a minute if you like.
I probably need a minute to think about it, but thanks.
A nice optimistic,
I won't take a minute. I like what Rob said earlier actually about don't trust, verify. I think I'm going to apply that not in your technology world, but in everything that I do, because I think that's probably good advice. Whilst I'm not the technology specialist here, I think people have a huge part to play. Things are changing dramatically. The world is becoming far more complex. AI has a part to play. In answer to the previous question, I think in all aspects of supply chain work. I'm sure we're using it in our day-to-day lives. I used AI to semi-prepare for today in terms of bringing some new thoughts and ideas together, and whether you use Copilot or others are available, etc. It will come down to people, and I would urge everybody to really grasp the training and the opportunities that are out there, and then take advantage of the technology as much as they can. But make sure you surround yourself with as best people as you can. If that's probably not very good grammar, but I think you know what I mean.
Absolutely, Hazel.
I would say take advantage of your network. Take advantage of Wales Tech Week and meet lots of people, and then you'll be able to then become better connected to the ecosystem, the supply chain, whether that's what's on your doorstep or across the water in Europe or further afield.
Oh, Paul's got another one.
I was just going to say Hazel's far more on message than I am. She's got to plug in for Wales Tech Week as well, and CS Connected.
Well done.
Brief thoughts. Okay, so dreaming for a little bit here. As I said, 90% of the tech is solved, 90% the challenge remains human. We have an opportunity in the next 5 years to reinvent a thin layer that sits on top of the existing internet stack. You know, we have so much in terms of technological and machine-to-machine comms already solved. We're just talking about the thin layer at the top for business interoperability, data interoperability, availability, control over data, and the rest of it that could feed into critical supply chain processes to unlock sort of future of global trade. That's where I'll.
Very good.
I'll finish by saying, be optimistic.
Yeah. I'm going to finish where I started, which is to say, where you don't know the answer yet, there is an infinite number of possibilities for the answer. So see the uncertainty, see the opportunity, get out there, be creative, swap ideas with people that you meet at this event and other events, and see what problems you can solve to take us into the next phase. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to you, Samantha, and to the panel. Fantastic discussion there, really wide-ranging on all sorts of topics, and really nice to get all of your different thoughts. So thank you very much.